Welcome to Unfinished Conversations, a sacred space where we tell the truth on purpose. These aren't performances, and they're not interviews, but they are real, honest conversations between people who are still becoming. I created this space for voices in motion, stories in progress, and transformation that unfolds in real time. So, wherever you are on your journey, lean in, listen deeply, and reflect with us. Because growth doesn't always announce itself, but it often begins with a conversation. Hey, y'all. Come on in. You have joined the first episode of the Unfinished Conversation series. It's an extension of my first book, Unfinished and Still Living Out Loud, and it's my way of continuing the conversation related to development and transformation. And I'm so excited to have, family, that family that you get, not necessarily by blood, but by love. They're going to be joining in with me on this first conversation, where we're going to be talking about what it means to toss the box and get rid of labels. But before I do that, I want to introduce them and I want to get their reactions to my book. So I'm going to start. If you've read my book, if you picked up and you read my book, you were introduced to a character. And I think it was around chapter 3. Her name was ML, but I call her Mama. So I want to introduce you to Vanessa Long. And then in a chapter later, I think I talked about how my family of love, very similar to the community I grew up in Southeast DC, was New Birth. And I gathered siblings that I adopted, and 2 of my sisters are here too. We've got Keisha Harris and we've got Desiree Powell. So my first question is, what do you all think? None of you all knew I was writing a book. I didn't know I was writing a book. So what do you think?
Well, let me just say, first of all, I was so just in awe of that title, Unfinished, and it related to me. I made it relate to me because I feel unfinished in many ways. And as I read the book, some of the things that you said just really resonated in me, like knowing when it's time to make a transition and just even steps to do it. So I was really blessed by your book.
Thank you, Mama.
So as I was reading the book, first of all, I'm amazed that you have a book, but our book was always in you. Like there was always a book in you because I could just tell all the things that you were going through, all the knowledge, all the wisdom that you had. There was a book inside you. So I'm glad you finally got it out into production. But the first thing that captured me was the actual cover. I actually love the colors. I actually love the butterfly. And the butterfly is a form of transformation. It forms from a cocoon, but then actually it transforms into a butterfly. And there's so many different facets of a butterfly. So as you look at the butterfly itself, you use the butterfly with a lot of dimensions. And so it has a lot of character. And then when I actually went inside the book, I was even more impressed because I read lots of books. Sometimes I have to grab my glasses, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes the lighting has to be perfect. But this particular book, the paper you use is really smooth. I'm really serious about this, but the paper you use is really smooth. It's easy to look at. The font is good. The spacing is great. And then you left enough space for people to actually write notes. And I don't know if all of this was intentional, but this is what I actually looked at when I started reading the book. So it's just not that you produced a book, but you produced a book in quality and excellence. And I absolutely love it. And inside the book, I started reading in the beginning, and I thought, oh my God, this is really about her. And just to be honest, when you start reading the book, it seems like she's going through a biography of herself. But then when it got to the middle and you was actually putting all the things that formed you, the formation, and this is caused honor and this caused integrity and this was looked at. And so I was like, wow. So I really had to stop at that point and reflect on my whole life and see how you brought all of it. It's like baking a cake, you know? You have all the ingredients, you put the butter and the flour and everything, the sugar, and then all of a sudden it forms. All of the formation is together, but then it's transformed when you put into the oven as a cake, and it's beautiful. And so we're all beautiful. We're all uniquely beautiful. And that's what I thought about when I wrote the book, and I had to look at myself and say, hey, what are these unique qualities and where did they come from in me? So thank you for writing the book.
Well, thank you. It's interesting. Before we jump to Dad's, I gave my dad the first 4 chapters as a manuscript. And he said when he was reading the stories about that I was recounting about me, he was like, okay, where is she going with this? Where is she going with this? Where is she going with this? And then there is actually a point to it. So as you were sharing, that reminded me of that. Thank you. Your reaction, sis?
Well, thank you for inviting me to be a part of your book discussion. Unfinished. So a lot of parts resonated with me. It captured me even in the dedication into what you talked about to your nieces. The qualities that they have, I recognize those within me as well. But even going back to that at the book launch, just being in the room, when everyone on the panel was sharing about the book, the stirring began even then. So you recounting your life in here touched me in a way that I know I am unfinished because the Lord was revealing something without actually saying it. But then when I started reading it, I was like, okay, he started touching. And then even when I got to the part when you were talking about your dad and you were at the school and your mom and dad came up there and they said, your dad said, Christine, you stay right there.
Without looking at me.
Without looking at you. And you stood right there. And just to know what that moment had to have meant to you, it started digging deep within me. Mm-hmm. So that resonated really, really loudly and really deeply with me. So there's a lot to it, and I love it.
Wow. Well, I didn't know that I was going to write a book. And as I think about the book and transitioning into the topic I want to talk about today, I think it's important, especially when you're leaders, to normalize the experience that you have with being human, even though you are a leader. And part of that is, hey, I may be a leader, I may have responsibilities, but I don't always have it together. I'm unfinished. And even though I'm unfinished, I make the decision that I'm still going to live out loud, to live life the way that God intends me to live it, even with my imperfections and even with my flaws. So thank you for taking the opportunity to read it and support it. And it's not meant to be, I think, with the heart of a teacher and as a coach. I didn't write it with the intent of you read it and you finish. You read it to feed, because I have those questions at the end of the chapters. I have those things to practice at the end of chapters, and that takes time. And speaking of taking time, this is the first of 12 episodes. We're on a transformation journey, and we invite you on the journey with us, not just with the book, but even in the conversations with the conversation series. Let's continue the journey of transformation and being unfinished, because we will never get to a place where we're fully completed. So the topic that I want to talk about today are labels. I found that part of my struggling to feel finished was because I carried a label. And when I think about labels, that's the label that, I'm the oldest of two. So that label of being responsible, look out for your little brother, or make sure you're on your best beat, that burden of being responsible. Or you guys know me, I'm that execution person, get it done. So being very task driven and achievement oriented, and feeling some kind of way even about myself if I've fallen short to some degree. Those are things that I found would get in the way of the transformation that God was doing. And I just wanted to have a conversation with you all, because you all, yes, you're family by love, but I also know that you're leaders in your own right. And God has assigned you to different platforms in different areas. And I'm just curious, and I'm interested in having you share with those that are eavesdropping on our conversation around the labels that you struggle with that have gotten in the way of you becoming of you as part of your journey and being unfinished. So whoever would like to jump in.
Well, for me, I've had many labels. Growing up, I'm number 7 of 7 girls. So many times I was labeled, oh, you're the baby. I mean, even into adulthood, you're the baby. And I was, got to a place where I had to start saying, no, I'm the youngest, because I felt that people had, preconceived notions about the baby. They're spoiled and, so it's like, no, I don't want that. I'm not going to deal with that anymore. I'm the youngest. And then, of course, I've always had to follow what the sister before me did. So growing up, it was always Dale's sister. And whatever classes Dale took, whatever teacher Dale had, I had to have that teacher or class. So it was that. And then, of course, when I married my husband, it became First Lady. And there's so much that comes with that title. And I never really felt comfortable with it. First of all, I'm an introvert. I'm not that kind of person that likes to be up just chatting away and being in front of a congregation. That wasn't me. So those are some of the labels that I deal with, and that I'm overcoming.
And that is almost, as you didn't say the word, but I'm curious to know if you felt this way. The label of being the baby and having that sister you're following behind, like a shadow, you're following in the shadow. That's what I would hear from my brother being younger. And I hear even with my nieces, I'm nobody's shadow. And I think I talk about that with Simone, that she is the baby girl. You don't have, you follow your own path in your own lane. You're not in any shadow.
Right. And I do think because I was required to follow whatever in her footsteps, I got to a place where I didn't know who I was, what I wanted. It was very difficult for me.
How did you see yourself navigating and coming out of that box?
I don't think I came out until probably going to college. Of course, we were at the same college. My sister and I laugh about it now because we didn't know that we had a choice. We were just told, oh, you're going to Morris Brown. Get your application for Morris Brown. Same for me. So I think because she was in a different area of studying, and so was I, had a different set of friends. That was when it started to kind of break away.
Okay.
But it was difficult.
I understand what you're saying. I grew up differently. I don't think I actually felt like I was in a box or labeled until I got married to my husband, who happens to be very, just a very outgoing people person. But like Lady Long, I was always, introverted, quiet, wanted to stay back, but I was always labeled, oh, that's Horatia's wife, Nowhere I could go. Wasn't like who I was, but I was always Horatia's wife. And it's good. Yeah, I understand. And May, coming up in May, it will be 30 years for us.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's good, but I walked in that shadow I'm still walking in it. Someone can see me in a store, wherever. Oh, you're Horatia's wife. And so then when I got kids, I was always either I was Horatia's wife, or I was Trinity's mom, or I was Horatia's mom, or I was Grace's mom, or Kiana at that time. And then I got to a point after about 15 years, I was like, who am I? I'm just a slave to Horatius Trinity. And, it's because being a mom and having 3 kids, most moms will relate to this. You're driven, your whole purpose and everything you do is driven by whatever they need, and like your mom in a part in the book you wrote, you said your mom made sure you were prepared, that you had everything you need when you were going through, the part where you were talking about running for president or what position ever it was, student government. I feel like I'm always making sure that my kids are ready for whatever task they're doing. Oh, okay, you're cheerleading now? Let's make sure you have everything. Oh, you're doing an art project? Let's make sure you have everything. And I will go beyond extreme. Most teachers didn't realize I was the one doing all the art projects. They used to use projects even years later as an example or because I was the one, I felt like I had to do everything, so I wore that label of everybody else. So after 15 years I'm like, who am I? And I feel like there was a part of me all of a sudden got rebellious because I lost sight of who I was. And it's like everybody's just driving me. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. I need you to do that. I want you to do. But what do I want to do? And so I had to break out of the box. And then it was so, I guess you could say, it was scary because when I broke out and they're like, okay, so you want to be you? Okay, who are you? And I had to go within myself to figure out, what do you like? Because at that time when you're young, you like different things, but now you're over 40. So what do you like? Who are you? Where do you want to go? What style you want? It was just a transformation for me to even figure out who I really was.
Well, what was your first step?
Praying, seeking the Lord, really going within, fasting. It was scary because at the same time you're trying to figure out who you are, as a first lady, you're in front of a lot of other people and they feel like you're this or you're that. And they're trying to tell you, there's some people in the church or elders, they're trying to guide you into who you're supposed to be, or I guess who they want you to be. You need to do this, or the women need this, or you need this. And I'm like saying to myself, I would love to be all of that to them, but first of all, I need to figure out who I am so I know how to help others. So a lot of my time was just really spent in prayer with the Holy Spirit, just trying to figure out who I was. And there was times when I reached out to other first ladies, Des, and Lady Long just to ask questions. How do I navigate this thing? How do I reach out to Des a lot because she was a new first lady like I was. And so I knew she knew our heart was kind of synced and the things that she's gone through. And so I was like, how do I do this? And I could be honest and open to her. I don't know how to do this, you know? And in the midst of all of this, of me finding out who I am, I all of a sudden started a career because I was a stay home mom. I had the blessing to be a stay home mom for like 17, 18 years. So at that same time, I was actually starting to go into real estate and realizing, hey, I have things that I can do here in real estate. And at the same time, still trying to break out of the box and figure out who I am. I was in a cocoon, just trying to break out.
As you were sharing, Keisha, and I, unlike the three of you all, never sat in the seat of a first lady, but I view that from a position of leadership, with having the seat that each of you sat in and sit in. I sat in the audiences, where many of you were revered and are revered as leaders. So when I hear you talk about, hey, other people were trying to tell me to go this route or that I should be this, I mirror that to what I often hear with coaching clients. When I think about a career path, this is the way that people are telling me to do it. And I find it a blessing when I am connected with someone who's a person of faith, because then I can encourage them to do what you just mentioned. Well, what is your faith? You mentioned a bit ago that when you get confused, you lean into faith. So how is your faith leading you now? So I see the parallel. You all are talking ministry, but because of the seat that I sit in, I see the same challenges that people have with trying to figure out other areas of life when they're stepping out of the shadows of their husbands, or they're stepping out of the shadow of being that nurturer and that caretaker as mom. How do I step into that lane and that path of what God has called me to be? So thank you, Lady Des.
Just listening to each of you, our stories are similar, whether it's one word or one part of it. And I too grew up responsible. And so I was the one waking up my brothers and sisters, so we can get to school on time. My mom was a single mom taking care of all of us. Also, cooking the dinners, some of those hamburger helpers, and washing the clothes, and, doing all that kind of nine-yard stuff. And so that formed my young life. And so I went through high school same way. So for me, being responsible, even till now, just having to still wear that hat and ready to take it off. Sometimes I feel like in a rebellious way, but that's not my personality. So I continue to roll with it, So I really haven't come out of the box yet, because being responsible, okay, that's how I was formed. I don't think it's time for me to move away from that yet, because it may be still part of my formation, even though I'm ready to break loose, from it. So that's still part of it being unfinished. And then to the label of, being a first lady, I never saw that at all. Didn't dream about it, didn't have any pictures on the wall, nothing like that, but it happened, so I roll with it. I walk in it because that's what my husband was called to. And that role for me was more of, and still is, supporting my husband And that's the way it looked. And that's the way we were gracefully trained in that. And so it was, however he wants me to support him in that role, that's how I flowed. And that's how I continue to flow. Um, when we actually were planted in Augusta, it was more of a yet the people wanted something in a first lady, what first ladies do, and that wasn't me. I wasn't a public speaker, and all these things, and leading the women's ministry or anything like that. I was a support, and that's who I still am. Just a great support. But I am in a different season of life where I do believe my roles may be changing, or the hat is changing, or I'm ready to pick up something else. And the Lord is revealing that a little bit more and more. So I'm kind of leaning into that part of my life right now.
Yes, what the word that comes up for me as I listen to you all are shifts and seasons.
Exactly.
So I can relate when you say that being responsible. Yes, I'm still that, but it's had to shift. Like when I think about, knowing, I talk about my mom a lot in the book, and quite naturally, she's a significant and influential figure. But I can visually remember what it felt like trying to be so much to my brother at the time, and actually I was in DC and going to her gravesite and saying, this is just too much. And in that moment, I recognized that being responsible in that way wasn't my assignment for my brother. Responsibility had to look different. And he even would say, hey, you're not my mama. You're my sister. I mean, so I'm still responsible, but the way that responsibility may show up looks different now. I'm still an executor, right? But being perfect and being flawless with it. You used to get on me about that, Angela. Nobody's as hard on you as you are on yourself. I'm going to execute and get it done, but it's not going to be perfect. So it's the labels that I think that we may put on ourselves that restrict us. They don't free us. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does.
And it's how do we kind of toss off and become unburdened and uncumbersome of those kind of things to embrace, okay, I am shifting. It is a different season. I'm still trying it out. I don't have it figured out. Me and God are figuring this out. No, I don't have the answer to who I am yet. And being okay. And I think what I've discovered is that it's taken a long time for me to sit in that subtle place of me. It's okay for me not to have an answer. I don't know I don't know where this is going. I don't know what's going to happen next. And that's okay.
And you touched on it too when you talked about perfection versus excellence. And that's the way I used to roll. Perfect. Everything had to be perfect. The strands, everything had to be perfect. Everything in its place.
Where do you think that comes from?
Wanting to be accepted. Not wanting to be rejected. And wanting to be received as who you truly are, because carrying that load of responsibility, even at a young age, and then you carry it through life, can affect you to where you're not becoming and being transformed into who you really are. So it takes time. So even now, even at my age, I still feel like I'm in that formation season. I'm still in that wilderness, so I haven't gotten to that full, formation. So I recognize that there are multiple layers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even in the formation, there's a lot. You know, and I believe that's when I was at the book launch, he touched something, and it was like, "Ooh, what is oh." And it happened again before we left. It happened again. So I'm like, okay. And then when I started reading, and when I got to the part about your dad, that's when the floodgates really opened up, like literally. I was boohooing, my face was in the book. So, you know, carrying a label of being responsible for so long and not ever able to break out of that coat, that jacket, that label, it keeps you there because you don't want to disappoint others who are looking at you as that's misresponsible, right?
It becomes a prison in a sense, you know.
Yeah.
Like I can't say that I don't know. I can't say that I need help because I'm the one that everybody's looking to as being responsible. Yeah, that's a burden in a prison.
I think you'll really grab people's attention if you say no.
Oh yeah,
Something that they want you to do. No.
I've had to grow to that.
Yeah, you have to do that.
I have had to grow. I can remember sitting across from dinner with my dad, a friend of mine, and my stepmom, and I said no, and that is a complete sentence. And his response is, and yes, it's a complete sentence too. And I said, the answer is still no,
Yes,
without the explanation. And it's not that not, and my dad knows if he really needs me, I'm gonna be there. But is knowing how to care for myself and knowing when taking on responsibility is too much and it's not healthy. That the labels as others have intended for me are not necessarily labels that I accept as my own. And that is, I want to circle back to something that you said that I don't want to gloss over, Keisha, and that is prayer. Prayer being that discernment to say, okay, is this God? How are you seeing this? Because other people feel like this is my responsibility and what I should be doing, or this is who I should be, or this is how I should be flowing in this leadership role. But how do you see this? And being open to him showing me his perspective, it didn't necessarily align sometimes with what family members or close friends actually thought.
Yes.
So if you were to speak to your younger self about a label, what would you tell your younger self? So if we were to speak, you know, when I think about, you know, I wrote the book for my nieces. I try to get them to not step into my minefields. But if you were to speak to your younger self about a label, what would you say?
I actually, since I have two younger girls, at this point they're 26 and 29, and I see them trying to figure out who they are. And yesterday, the Lord gave me an analogy to help my Gracie. And it was kind of funny, but she really got it. I told her, you got to be who you are called to be. I said, just think of it. And the Lord gave me this analogy, and I see things in pictures. And so I said, just think of it as everybody starts off with vanilla ice cream. You know, everything is vanilla ice cream. But some people got sprinkles, some people got chocolate chips, some people got syrup on them. Everybody is uniquely different. And you cannot allow somebody to say you can only be plain vanilla ice cream because there's so many different facets of everything, you know? And if you look at everybody, everybody's uniquely different. But if you are different, you know, like the label she's ADHD, if you are different, they try to make you seem normal, but you're not normal. It's your creativity and what you're going through that allows you to be the most brilliant artist there is. When I look at the things that you're doing and how you're painting things on the canvas, a normal brain does not think that way. It's like there's so many dimensions to her art. And I said, so, I mean, you're vanilla ice cream with some sprinkles and chocolate chips and syrup. I said, you may even have some fruit up in there, but that doesn't make you, there's nothing wrong with that. You're uniquely different. You were created by God uniquely different, and everyone is created differently. So be who God has called you to be, and just pray, meditate, and you'll be in tune with who you're really supposed to be, and just walk that out and stay true to who you are. Because when you start trying to be someone else or walk in someone else's shoes. A running joke I used to have, and you don't know this, Lady Long, but I said, I cannot wear the same high heels that Lady Long wore. I have to wear my own high heels. So I used to tell the women that, because coming from a ministry that was so thriving, it was just operating excellence, as New Birth was, and you were the head of that, and they look at you as the first lady, and oh, she got it going on. I'm like, no, no, no. She had her high heels, and I have my high heels. So please don't make me try to wear the same shoes that she had, because that's who she is and who God created her to be. And I'll develop into this, but I have to walk out my own journey that God has given me. And that's what I would tell the younger ones. Walk out, realize who you're supposed to be, and be who you're supposed to be. And don't look at others in a negative way, because we're all uniquely different.
Mm-hmm. You for your younger self?
My younger self, Des, you're okay. And wear that with confidence.
Mm-hmm. My younger self, I would tell, you're enough. I think it's always feeling like I had to fit into somebody else's shoes or fit into someone else's expectations. Finally settling in. Girl, you're enough. You're enough. You have enough. You're enough. Imperfect with flaws, but still enough. So that's what I would tell my younger self.
I think I would tell myself, what do you want to do? I'd ask myself, what do you really want to do? Do you want to take this class because your sister took it? Or I think I would get more in touch with who I was as an individual and say it's okay to do something different. You don't have to do that.
Well, how do you think I know we say that. How did we get to the place of getting in touch with ourselves? So like for me, in a practical sense, that's journaling. This is what's going on in my head. This is what's going on with how I feel. So journaling is it for me, getting in touch with, I had to almost like purge in a sense to kind of sort through what I'm thinking and feeling. I'm just curious to what has it been for you guys to get to, okay, this is what I want, or this is unsettling to me.
It's prayer.
Yeah.
That's how I get to the opportunity to release and that purging. And then once I'm in that still moment, then I hear and I'm settled. Mm-hmm. And then that's when it may not be articulated, but that's when, okay, Des, you're okay. Mm-hmm. But once I get to that place in him, then I know So for me, it's prayer as well.
I agree. I would find myself crying out to God, Lord, please tell me what it is I'm supposed to do. What is my purpose? Just prayer, crying out. And I started back writing. I had stopped writing for a while. This is part of the reason why. And so that has been really helpful to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I will take a combination of every one of the things that you guys do. But I started a long time ago writing a letter to God.
Wow.
And I um, just start writing to God, just prayer and just writing out everything and everything that's bothering me. And God, you know this, and how am I supposed to deal with this? And then I stop, meditate, and I start writing, and it's God speaking back to me. And as I'm hearing, I'm writing all of this down, and I'll find myself in tears because as I'm writing, I realize this is not coming from me. And then once I'm finished and the flow is done, I go back and read it.
Mm-hmm.
And once I read it, it's like, wow. And that like really helps me uh, get in tune with what I'm really supposed to do and who I really am. And when I see opposition come against that, then I know it's not the Lord, because that's not what He told me about me. And yeah.
I appreciate sharing that. And when I think about kind of the space that I play in terms of work, and if I'm particularly in a classroom setting working with leaders, it's so important to have different voices where you're not just the same voice in the room. And even if I'm the facilitator having and pulling from other people, I bring that up to say, you're saying crying out. You're saying it's a combination of all these things, me writing, pausing, and then hearing what the Holy Spirit is saying to me. And then you're saying, okay, I'm in a place of being still. Hearing that, it's my hope that somebody there who's listening says, okay, you know what? I experienced that. I've even found that my prayer time is like at Stone Mountain this morning, doing my 5 miles with heaven soundtrack, with the streams behind me, the birds chirping. I don't have to be the one that's talking all the time. It's Him pouring into me. So whatever I would say to those who are listening, for me it's writing, for ML it's crying out, for Lady Keisha it's a little bit of everything. Sister Dad said, hey, it's when I get still. When God is speaking to you. And guess what? I think you also know, when Lady Keisha brought it up, when opposition comes and well, that's not what He told me. And we can often, I would say, labels will often bounce back as a means of keeping me bound. Oh, you're not good enough yet. Oh no, I'm not good enough, but I'm gonna get better. No, I'm not perfect, but I'm gonna get better. It's gonna get better. And not having those same labels that had me bound keep me bound, but to take authority over them.
I would want to add like one thing to that. The things you say to yourself, to pray, to write declarations, and things that you say to yourself, make sure they're positive, and make sure that those things that you're saying or you're writing and reciting, or you know, just are positive where you're supposed to go, like where God has told you to go, and it will help pull you from where you are, to where what you're called to be.
You're speaking over yourself in a way of, it's almost like I'm taking those steps of faith to move I don't see it now, but I believe this for myself, and I'm speaking it over myself. I can relate to that too.
Decree and declare.
Yep.
I had to do that before I got here. It's like, you can do this. You're worthy.
And you are
have
doing
something to
this.
say.
Yes. And
We have to talk to ourselves and make those declarations.
I think that is what you just mentioned is a label within itself. Like the pressure you feel like, oh, they're expecting me to show up in this way. Well, you guys know me. I'm expecting you to show up as you, not for anybody else, but the conversations that we would have, whether it's on the phone or at dinner, or the conversations that we've had. What's our spot in Buckhead? What's the name of that spot? But when we're exchanging, having a meal, or when we're encouraging each other, whether that's through a text, that's who I wanted to show up, because these ladies have something to say, and being who you truly are, not what people quote unquote expect you to be. So I've got two sentences I'd like for you to complete. Fill in the blank. Toss the box for me means.
Cutting the cord.
Okay. Cutting the cord. And that is absolutely fine.
What does toss in the box mean to me? I just hear break out. You gotta break out.
Tossing the box for me means embracing me where I am. Embracing me where I am as I am. One more. Unfinished is beautiful because.
There are so many opportunities to let your creativity rise up in you. And, if we don't break out, I think we will be miserable the rest of our lives if we don't start to embrace the abundant life that God has for us and doing it in a way that's authentic to us. So
Unfinished is good because I feel it's a foundational level to help you get in touch with the inner you.
Mm-hmm. And unfinished is beautiful to me because this is who I am today. And accept me for who I am today. Because I know the Lord loves me just the way I am, imperfections and all. Mm-hmm. Continue to seek after that spirit of excellence. Continue to walk in that spirit of excellence. But this is who I am today.
And with your saying that there is such a freedom in that. It's like, I can exhale. I'm unfinished. I'm not perfect. The pressure's not there, but just accept me for who I am. And I think that that's the beauty in it. I can continue to evolve from the cocoon layers and all. And there's still beauty in that too. There's beauty in my evolution. So I thank you, ladies, for the conversation. I know some of you may be struggling with your own labels. We talked about the labels of the titles and positions and the pressures that come with that. We talked about the labels that may have been placed on us based on our family placement or the way that we may have grown up. Whatever the label it may be that you are reflecting on or maybe challenged with, I'd like to leave you with this. Identity trumps labels. Consider your identity and who you are in Christ. That far exceeds and outlasts any label that you could ever have. And the conversation isn't going to stop here. There's a resource that I have for you that speaks to labels where you can continue to do some reflecting. We talked about journaling and we talked about praying and getting still. So I've got some coaching prompts that you can think about and some practices that you can put at play at your own pace in your own time. So check out the link that's provided in the comments to join our private group where we'll be in community focused on transformation together. This isn't the end. We're just getting started. Thank you for joining us. Until next time. I appreciate you, and I thank you for being part of this unfinished conversation. This isn't just content. It's a call to pause, to reflect, and to tell the truth about where you are and who you're becoming. Transformation doesn't require a title or a platform. It starts with presence. And that's why I created the living room, a space for honest reflection, shared wisdom, and staying connected to the journey of becoming. So, if something from today stayed with you, don't keep it to yourself. Join us inside the living room, our private Facebook group. You'll find the link in the comments below. Until next time, stay present and keep living unfinished.